Hey everyone, welcome back to another recap podcast from SNXweave, where we give quick weekly recaps of news and important updates from the previous week from the Spartan Council and core contributors, as well as discuss what the Grants Council and ambassadors are up to, so let's get started. Among the SIPs we discussed last week, SIPs 239 and 240 will also be included in the upcoming Rosselhog release. SIP 239, which recovers unallocated liquidation rewards due to the initialization issues caused by SIP 148, is complete and has been approved with all 8 council members voting in favor. And SIP 240, which will liquidate the correct amount of debt for accounts with mostly escrowed SNX, still needs to be presented and voted on. Last week, Millie presented SIP 242 to the Spartan Council, which proposes a distribution mechanism for OP tokens to be claimed from the Optimism Governance Fund. Millie explained that he and the ambassadors worked out that passing 6 million OP tokens at a token price of $1 to stakers on Optimism would equate to about a 15% ROI, which is not enough to move the needle on staking participation and would be even less if more users switched over to Optimism. So contrary to Kane's SIP, stakers will not be getting any OP tokens as part of this proposal. This SIP therefore proposes diverting most of the incentives to SNX liquidity and bridge liquidity. Of the 9 million OP tokens that have been granted to synthetics, this SIP proposes using 4 million over 6 months for incentives towards an SNX USD pool on Optimism, 3 million for SUSD liquidity and bridge incentives for SUSD with a synthetics bridge partner, and 2 million to hold for potential builders grants, trading rewards, or other unforeseen incentives needed to bootstrap usage on Optimism over the course of 3 to 6 months. This portion of the allocation is to be held by the Treasury Council, with the voting power delegated to the ambassadors until it is spent for incentives. Some questions were raised during the presentation. Kane asked what mechanism they're thinking of using to incentivize the SNX USD pool, and Millie said they want to use the Uniswap v3 staker contract, but it would require some input and work from the core contributors to help integrate it with the Synthetics UI. Caleb also wanted some clarification on why the SIP proposes incentivizing SNX USD instead of SNX ETH. Millie explained that given the bearish trend, it would affect liquidity providers less to pair with a stable rather than a volatile asset. Caleb expressed concerns that SUSD is in such high demand and that he would prefer it not be locked up in LP contracts, and consensus was reached that the stable doesn't necessarily have to be SUSD. Lastly, Caleb asked if there will need to be another SIP that goes into further detail about how and when tokens will be distributed. Matt confirmed that there will need to be one, but that the initial plan is to get approval first from Optimism. Kane agreed that this SIP should reach community consensus first, then the delegation specifics can be figured out once the approval comes back from Optimism. In Grants Council updates, Mike suggested the possibility of participating in the ETH New York Hackathon at the end of June. Big Penny will be doing some initial research on this and come back next week to develop the council's approach to a possible sponsorship similar to that of the India Hackathon. Next, the stats page is still in progress, but the dev is experiencing some delays. This project is much bigger than originally anticipated, so the delivery date is still unclear. Lastly, work is still ongoing for the NFT project. As we all know, the design team is primarily stationed in Ukraine, which has caused some unavoidable delays to this project. And the marketplace they want to deploy on, Universe.xyz, is at least 6 months out, but the team has agreed to create a whitelist platform exclusively for the Synthetics NFT project if necessary. And that's it for today's updates. Be sure to check out our weekly recap blog post, share this podcast link, and let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear more about from SNXweave. Thanks for listening.